class I'll show you how to use texture for creating light trails, which always looks incredible in 3D renders. We use After Effects, Redshift and Cinema 4D. Now on screen you see the result of this class, and if you like it, let's start to explore the techniques. We start to build our scene from the plane and pre-made texture from Jsplacement, which I affect by polar coordinates. So this is a round PNG. You'll see that's simple, and how it looks we're gonna apply to our geometry. And to create some and to use the height as a displacement, we'll have to add Redshift object. Going to add segments, and be sure we have a lot of segments for this thing. We add displacement, create texture, text map, and connect to displacement, and let's material drag into surface. We go to enable displacement and add displacement height, so maybe 40, and create light at the side to see if they're bright and shadow zones. Let me extend it like this, put it maybe to the side, and yeah, you'll see that we have already complex plane. I create camera and put it to the 0 with 0 angle, create null and parent camera to null. Now we can play with null for creating round rig. I'll scale the null and find proper angle. It's a bit tricky and it's up to you how to play it. Go into view and time borders at the top and the bottom. I set to opacity 100 to see our frame clearly. And let's play with animation. Maybe going like this, maybe with extra angle. Hit keyframe, go into the last frame, rotate, maybe angle a bit. Yes, and okay. Ctrl A, spline to linear interpolation, and we have smooth. Oh, I think we have to pause. Smooth animation. Now we have to play with our displacement, our material, to build the total scene. I scale down the area light. Going to Redshift, and you'll see that I use brute force. You can use no brute force, but now we have dark shadows. I add brute force 1 bounce for adding extra light. Now going to texture and maybe use ramp, connect texture to input and to diffuse. So we have black and white texture not only in displacement, we can recolor it, but in color, and reset to 0. And I would like to add bluish color, something dark. Oh, too much dark. Play with color, maybe a bit cyan, add some, and going to light, adding intensity, maybe playing with these dark zones, so we have very contrast material in color. Now we play with roughness, so we get specular and rough material. Now we create a center tube, maybe with dark material but with a little bit of roughness. Apply it to cylinder and up it, lock the camera, making it less thick, create copy, extend. So we're just building simple scene. Now IPR is helping us to see where we work with our displacement. So I would like to bottom element cover our displacement. Now I think everything looks nice. Disable rotation, maybe up it. I mean disable position animation, but keep the rotation. Create few zones, small one, big one, thick one. You'll see, not very fancy, just playing with primitives. One more, the big one. Let's select it. Going to fillet. We need small caps or fillets on the edges and add extra segments just to have smooth geometry. You'll see that we cover displacement, and now maybe we can decrease it so we have no intersection of our geometry. Let's check the animation. It's very simple, it's very basic. And what we have to do, going to materials, maybe decreasing the roughness or too much. We have to find the balance and reflectance, maybe decreasing the IOR. Create one more material, and I would like to have almost similar materials but with slightly difference in different aspects. And now it looks more organic, more variationable, and I would like it. Going to assign, yes, to cylinder, there for other, and now we get two materials and the base one of plane. Our scene is almost ready. We create maybe something more, some details just to separate or to complex our top cylinder, maybe using Klana with radial. Let's find proper plane, radius to 0, and now we can create these segments. You'll see they're adding extra details. We go into fillet, and they looks like cylinder. We can find the balance of detailing. I would like to add this roughness material to it. Pretty simple, pretty interesting. Add more light because too dark. Add few variation. Now we have the rotation. You'll see that we have everything good, but there are some issues at the bottom. We can play with this edge length. The more maximum subdivision we use and the lowering minimum edge length, the detailing our geometry will be. So you can play with 0 or 1 or maybe 2 to find proper extrusion or displacement. You'll see here we have some bags. But even when you're playing with displacement, sometimes you can't fix this thing, and you can use it for far, not close-up frames. I play with cylinder to extend it. Let me try maybe higher value of subdivision. You'll see it takes a lot of time, but doesn't solve our problem, so we can optimize our scene. Let me change to 16, nothing happened. So we can optimize our scene with proper value, not to have extra details, extra calculation, and this is it. Let's go into After Effects and to play with creating texture for our effect. I create the huge in width, maybe like this. We're gonna create some shape layers. I prefer to use shape layers and not layers like solids. And now let's create our effect. Maybe we'll start from the very basic shape, the very basics texture. I use fractal noise. Let's change to black. Decrease the complexity. So we have this cell noise looking. Now we have some animation. You'll see it's very fast to calculate, nothing fancy. And now let's add some complexity and other thing. I use FxConsole from Video Copilot, and now I use tint for recoloring. Maybe we use Venetial blinds just to add these cutoffs, huge cutoffs. We're trying to match our noise, but I think we have to keep this like this. And we duplicate Venetial blinds, rotate to 90 degrees, and now you have this mosaic cutoff. Let's play with transition compression, width, yes, nice one. And if we hit play, we'll see that we have this beautiful morphing. Now we have to go to levels and add extra contrast to our noise. It's easier for me than playing with noise settings. Pretty organic. Add maybe some more contrast. And I think the result we have good, so we can keep to feather. Now we create one more layer and optical flares. I go and set color maybe to orange, tinting our white to orange, and going to options, clear all, and all I have to do is to have glow and this line. Add some scaling, positioning, set animation from bottom side to another side, maybe a lot of, so we don't see our flare in frame 0 or almost no see. Move it down to the left, keyframing, move it to the right, a lot of to the right. So you'll see that it goes from one side to another side. Where is it? And now it goes very slowly. Yeah, it's okay. Going to add, and now we mix with our noise texture. Pretty nice. We're going to add mosaic just to create this block look. Going to levels, maybe decrease the lightness. Let's play the preview. Yes, it looks like a threshold, and we have this blocky look of our standard optical flares effect. Now we can rename it and move it to the composition. Duplicate, going to maybe coloring, add speed up one, just to have the loop, maybe flip vertical one, and of course we have to retime it so we don't have the similar animation of bottom and the top. Now we can go here, maybe tweak a bit, adding flickering. Let's play and check. Yes, it's flicker a bit. And here we have the update. Maybe going to decrease the scale too much. Yeah, pretty nice. I think it's almost ready. Let's add a few more details. Going to our composition, add one more optical flare, maybe to the right bottom, so it will be the head of our light. Going to add mosaic once again, but maybe with another settings. Adding, playing with vertical blocks, finding proper or look you want. I think something in between, it's very large. Playing with color, just small variation, maybe brightness. And you'll see that we have very bright the right side of our element, and I think we're playing with vertical blocks. Once more, horizontal, just finding the proper value, and now we're going to add maybe levels, play with levels to add extra contrast. Let me think. So adding speed to flickering, of course, and now we have flickering of right side and these bright optical flares going from left to right, from left to right, and they just covering the whole path of our texture with different speed. That's great. That's very interesting. Now we have to create one more shape layer, maybe with fractal noise, and going set to black, changing the contrast to have this only black and white highly contrast elements. I increase the width, decrease the complexity, so we don't need a lot of details for this thing. Extend size, maybe scale a bit or put it to the top so we don't have the top line. I think this looks nice, and we can working with brightness that will play as fade instrument, so like this. Maybe add extra brightness. Yeah, we have fading in very fast, and now we're going to pre-compose this thing as a reveal map and create one more with maybe ramp from left to right. We're going to pre-compose it. It's like time displacer. And now we can use time displacement. Going to use our gradient. So we have fading map. It use our gradient. So swap. So it building from left to right. We have to play with white color. It's like offsetting, so I think maybe 50% in gray. And yes, we have this building of our map. Now let's move the black to the right, and you'll see we have this gathering. Now we can add this stencil luminous that we have, building of our flares and all this stuff from the left. Here we have our texture, maybe playing a bit with some initial blinds to keep them maybe bigger, just to be more visible. And now we have building of our elements. Let's go in here. So checking what we're getting, and maybe add some length. So finalizing the result, maybe adding or decreasing brightness, adding contrast. Let's play. Yeah, looks nice. It's flickering, it's smoothing. This result we're gonna use in 3D. So before continue, we have to fix our edges, and for example you can use base texture and you can blur it in Photoshop with Gaussian blur. Use the blurred version for displacement. It's the same texture but with blurriness. We can connect it to displace. It's processing. You'll see into here, and after processing I think we'll get some result. Yes, it looks another way, and some of zones looks great and some not. We try to fix it. The logic of Redshift is that it's playing with segments, and this maximum subdivision, it's like subdivision surface, and the more subdivision you add, the more polygons you have and the more detail your surface. Sometimes it works with 3 or 5 and lower segments. Let's set to default. And now we can play with displacement, maximum subdivision. If result we're getting is pretty close to what we want to achieve, we can go to our primitive and try to twice the width. And sometimes it doesn't work, it doesn't affect, but it takes a lot of more processing power, so you have to find a balance between width settings. You'll see there is no effect here, and here we have something, and decreasing to 40 and increasing to maximum subdivision to 12 doesn't affect some of zones. So it's not the perfect technique. Time you have to remember that in render it can looks better. So we find some values, maybe like this. You'll see that minimum edge length, the lower this value, the cleaner the result. But of course it takes a lot of more processing power. Sometimes auto bitmapping can affect these edges, and you'll have to check it, but in our case it doesn't affect. So we keep these elements as is, and let's play with our render we made in After Effects. I loaded this texture, I rendered it as a sequence. We're hitting here, go into composition, we can select the first frame, going to animation folder, and we have to set mode simple, detect frames, and connect it maybe to color, and I think even to alpha. Now we go into reflection, transparency, shadows, so our luminous channel doesn't affect our shadowing. Now we have to create plane, which will be the surface on what we're gonna protect our texture. We're using arc, segment, and let's create animation. Let me move it to the position. Let's play with orientation. I think this one. Yes, here we have our arc. Let's play with spline drop, dropping our arc there. Now we have to play with axis correctly. Let's play with orientation of our plane. Now let's pause the render. Where is it? So something goes wrong. Plane, nothing goes correctly, and let's go back to our spline wrap and just rotate. Yes, it's okay. Now we're gonna play with height. Width doesn't matter, but we need a lot of details. Go into arc, and what we have to do, let's center our composition into group and hide it. Now we're going to angle, and we have this animation, we're going to keep our length so fits spline, but I think we can set this from and to just to this segment. Now we're going to arc segments, and oh, I see, the type is set to segment and should to be to arc. And now everything works great, and we're going to spline wrap, setting 2 to 100. Now we can add some segments and decreasing height segments to have smooth extrusion. Add our ERSC incandescent material. Now we're waiting for preview. For now we can disabling our geometry override. For faster preview, go into camera, on the center, go into illumination, intensity multiplier, yes, very bright, going and check that brute force is on. We can go and maybe decrease the height, like this, group it, LG, rename it, and we can move it to the bottom, the small one. Now we can create the duplicate, maybe add some width and height. Yes, looks nice. So we have the revealing of our bright element. Maybe duplicate, one more, of course rotate, just to have variation, add some angle, maybe add some or decreasing the height. Yeah, we have this bright head here, and I think we can flip our geometry. Yes, like this, and rotating. Duplicate once more, the big one. Decreasing the height. Rotate. And almost ready. Put it here. We can on our displacement just to see where we have intersection. Maybe put it here. Maybe to the bottom. Maybe too much. Let's fold this. Going to our intensity multiplier, and now we can see what we produce with intensity and brute force. Maybe like this. And we have end reflection and brute force going on. Now we can play with our intensity, just to add more of that, not to overlight our scene. Wide angle, I think this looks nice, but all we have to do is going and to last frame, maybe scale our plane a bit, just to find the balance of our composition. Now we move and fixing some height of our arcs, like this, going to lowering settings, and let's render our frames. We'll see what result we'll get. Now we can put our null into the camera focus, going to Redshift camera, bokeh, enable, and set the value so we have slightly depth of field of far elements. We can render this thing out. Here is the result, and we have building of our arcs, and it looks pretty interesting with this texture and this 3D, but I think we can improve this thing because our arcs are static, they don't have the rotation. I think this element of animation will improve our scene. So we're going to our nulls, maybe to the last frame, going to rotation in H, fix it, rotate in different angles, 1, 2, 3. So beautiful animation. We're going to animation, F curve, tweak it. So for fast, drop it here, the second one, fold it up, the tangents, the third one into rotation, up it. Let's play. Now it looks more interesting even in hardware preview. We'll see that we have small fade into the rotation to the end. Let me check it. I think we can render it and check the result. Now it's almost ready. We have this animation and details, and you'll see that result of rendering of edges is much more clearly than we see in IPR. So I think our settings were the good as we need, and blurriness help us, and everything looks great, much better than IPR. Already check it in final render. Let's play the animation. It looks more organic with all this rotation, all this animation with these details, and let's play. This is the static version, and you'll see that with extra animation it looks much more complex and finished. I hope you like this thing. Let me play it. And thank you for your attention in this class.